a strict adherence to the Constitution, a foreign policy which was at one time advised by Republicans like Robert Taft. It should be non-interventionist, mind our own business, no policing the world, and no interference in the internal affairs of other nations.
Yeah, right. So don't enter World War II, right? Don't do the world any favors. Yeah, wars are wrong. The wars we've gotten into lately have been really stupid. No one's going to disagree with that. But to use that as an excuse for just being, I don't even know what the word is, irresponsible. I mean, completely irresponsible. You know, I mean, you got to spend some money protecting the country. All right, and so you're going to have the aircraft carriers. You're going to have men on them. It's just bullshit to think we can just walk away and the rest of the world won't kill us.
About. It talks about free market economics and sound money, but it also talks about personal liberties. There's no reason in the world why Republicans can't be civil libertarians. And, you know,
well, you're not one. You're not for liberty. You're for states' rights. You're for turning the United States into a bunch of little Balkan countries that waste their time competing with each other. Yeah, it'd be just great. Let's have states' rights. And then each state can bribe the rich to live in their state. So they'll have no taxes on the rich, and they'll do everything they can to get their poor people out of their state. And so every state can compete on trying to eject the poor and attract the rich. And that'll somehow be good for America. Jackass.
Keep the government, you know, not only out of our wallets, but out of our bedrooms, too. And
yeah, well, the number one bedroom issue is abortion, you dumb fuck. I mean, is there some other, what other, how else is the government getting into our bedrooms? If it isn't because of religious jackasses like you who don't believe in evolution, telling them what they have to believe, what a fertilized egg means and what sperm and eggs do. I mean, what other bedroom issue is there, Mr. Ron Paul? What the fuck are you talking about? You oppose the very liberty you're sitting there ranting about.
I think that's good. We should reduce taxes, and that's the best place for the money to be, is back in the hands of the people who are productive, and they know better how to spend the money than we do.
Right, so the income tax payers, the richest people in the world, are the most productive people in the world. That's his philosophy, you assholes who buy into this crap. He thinks they do more work than you do.
But you mentioned cutting the payroll taxes, and that's fine. I'm for that, but you got to cut spending. And I'm not. I would.
Yeah. Well, what sense does it make to say that? Okay, you're saying okay, yeah, but you got to cut spending. Well, you've never been able to accomplish that. You've always cut the taxes first. So why? So yeah, we can't cut payroll taxes without cutting spending, but we can cut income taxes without cutting spending. Yeah, we get it.
The fair tax over the current system, but I'm really not all that gung-ho about replacing the income tax with a sales tax. I'm interested in reducing spending, which means, back again to foreign policy, we have to change our foreign policy so that we don't spend $1 trillion a year overseas. But that...
Yeah, well, we weren't always spending $1 trillion. Under Clinton, we weren't spending $1 trillion, but we were still deficit spending, weren't we? All right, until the last year. We certainly were deficit spending under Ronald Reagan, and we weren't in any, big wars.
It would stimulate the economy. I mean, just think if tomorrow nobody else had to pay any more payroll taxes or any income tax. You say, oh, how is the government going to exist? Well, quite frankly, we're not existing very well the way we're going right now. And we're
yeah, right. So when they were doing all that booming, right? So in the 80s and the 90s, all this big booming, all this big, huge economy, all this wonderful stuff that's going on, all these people making all this money, and how wonderful capitalism is. That was something, what? That an aberration? No, yeah, well, yeah, the reality is your capitalism didn't fucking work, you dumb ass. That's what everybody sees is quite obvious.
Well, the tariff is a legal process given to us by the Constitution, and if you had a small uniform tariff and not a protective tariff, that's how we financed our early government. But then, once again, you have to have a much smaller government. But, as far as regulation, I don't think it's a fair comparison to say that the states means if you deregulate, that the states then would say that 6-year-old kids can drive on highways at 100 miles an hour. I mean, that doesn't, I think, translate into the type of regulation that we propose up here in Washington.
Yeah, right. You're just a hypocrite. It's not about unregulating. It's about changing the regulations. It's about making a world safe for the aristos, okay? Save for the rich. Make it their optimum world, not the optimum world for the working class. No, for the privileged class. That's all you give a fuck about.
After Enron, all the individuals guilty in Enron were prosecuted under current law, which were fraud laws, and they went to jail. And the market took care of the value of the company. But what did
yeah, and who took care of all the debt, the fake the money that didn't exist, the money that never got paid back? The consumers did. The consumers paid that fucking price, you dumb prick. Okay, while a bunch of people got wealthy on the company on its way up. All right, and the consumers took the entire hit.
Republicans did. They immediately passed Sarbanes-Oxley, which chased more businesses. If you're concerned about jobs going overseas, you don't want Sarbanes-Oxley because that chases people overseas. People go overseas to start businesses because it's so hard to start businesses here.
Yeah, we know why they go overseas. It's because the labor is 10% of what it is over here, or 1%. You're so full of shit.
And they go to other countries. So if you want to do that, just like yesterday, we passed this bill that says buy American only, which, you know, that sounds real good. Oh, buy the steel from America for all this infrastructure. Well, I don't think we should be doing it. But if you say buy American only, what if the Americans don't build the steel? Or what if you pay twice as much?
Yeah, you pay twice as much because we don't kill the workers. Yeah, that's right. So you pay more because you don't kill workers. I mean, fuck you.
American companies you pay from overseas, so you have unintended consequences over these well-intended...
You have very much intended consequences, which are you say, well, this is the line, we won't cross this line. You know, if we can't do it here right, then it can't be done right anywhere else. Why should we have the expectation that somehow, if we can't get it done here, ethically and responsibly, that somehow some other country can? No, I don't think that's the equation. I think the equation is they're doing it some other way, some way that's not ethical and not responsible.
Ideas, but that's why you don't want government regulating and designing these programs.
Right, exactly. You want to import milk from China so you can have all kinds of chemicals in your chocolate, and you can have fucking salmonella in your peanut butter, and you can have this in your fruit, and you can have that in this, because you can just sit there and unregulate everybody. You fuck.
You're awfully close to us, and you need to study the idea of monopolies a little bit more, because there's good literature out there, because monopolies do exist, but none of them exist unless the government gives them to us. So
Did you hearing this? The government creates monopolies. Okay, so like France and Germany and England, those monopolies were created by a government somehow. I mean, come on, Jesus. This is so stupid. I mean, we had the whole fucking Revolutionary War because the British tea company had monopolized, okay, the importation of tea. All right, and they were basically dumping it on the American market. I mean, it was goddamn British tea in the goddamn fucking water. Okay, it was cheaper tea. It wasn't more expensive. It was cheaper fucking tea.
Isn't there to design the size of the business. If the business is big, it's big for one reason in a free market, because it provides a product at the right price. The price is low. But what you want to make sure, there's always free entry. But just because somebody...
Well, how do you do that? How do you do that make sure there's free entry thing? So what regulation would you put on Hearst in the publishing business? And what would you... Oh, we can go through each, you know, Rockefeller, and we can go through each one of them and their businesses and how you would have regulated them out of their control of those industries.
Microsoft, because they're big, you know, there's antitrust laws passed, filed against Microsoft. Well, Microsoft was built because you and I were buying their products.
Yeah, so there's another. Ron Paul thinks you intentionally and willfully bought the Windows operating system. He doesn't think you bought it because you were basically extorted into buying it because nothing else could compete with it, and there was 10,000 other products that had no value without it. And so he still thinks that somehow you deliberately and willfully paid Microsoft that money, and that you wanted Microsoft to destroy Netscape, and that you wanted Microsoft to buy up any company that would ever even talk about designing an operating system. Oh, fuck you.
government to come in and say how much business that Microsoft should have, but you have to have free entry. But the monopoly that you should be concerned about, and you did express concern, is the monopoly over money and credit through the Federal Reserve, which then props up the monopolies in the banks. So sure, there's a monopoly type of system in the banking system because they're licensed to do fractional reserve banking. So if you're
right, so you can borrow money at 3% interest or 4 or 5 instead of borrowing money at 15 or 20 or 30%, because guess what, if the only surplus that's held is the actual surplus held by the rich, then everybody's going to have to pay their price to borrow the fucking money. This country wouldn't have grown as fast as it has. It wouldn't have the infrastructure it has without fractional reserve banking. The fact that they let it, they regulated it wrong, doesn't mean that it is in principle wrong.